Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of My Child, My Voice, Kid Konnection show brought to you by the National Parents Union. And today I am so excited about our book as well as our craft of the day. My name is Miss Wendy, and I hope that everybody's going to enjoy this book that I picked, that we chose. The book of the day that we chose is called The Balloons Over Broadway by Melissa Sweet. And she also illustrated, meaning that she did a lot of the drawings that are in the book. And so we are going to talk about, I know some of you had celebrated Thanksgiving and may have watched the Thanksgiving Day Parade, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on your television. So we're going to find out how those big, huge helium balloons got started in the Macy's parade. And so we're going to read about that story. And then our craft of the day is going to be a paperback reindeer puppet, because the person that we're going to read about was a master puppeteer. So we're going to do a simple puppet that you can do from your home with things that you have around your house. So I am going to put this down, and we are going to start our story time. And let me go ahead and disappear for a little bit so we can start our reading the book. Give me 1 second. And here we go. Balloons Over Broadway, the true story of the puppeteer of Macy's parade. Oh, look at that. The Tony Sarg marionette book. And it gives you some information in the book about that. What are marionettes? Well, these are puppets. So you can read about that. This is what's so unique about this book that I love. You can read a lot about things that we weren't familiar with. So Balloons Over Broadway, the true story of the puppeteer of Macy's parade, written and illustrated by Melissa Sweet. And illustrated means that she had drew a lot of these designs, or the designs in the book. And then here is Tony Fredrick Sark. And this is the actual puppeteer that you see here. He was born in 1880 and passed away in 1942. So that tells you how long ago this was. And I love the quote that's in the book that he says, "Every little movement has a meaning of its own." Let's get started. From the time he was a little boy, Tony Sarg loved to figure out how to make things move. He once said he became a marionette man when he was only 6 years old. His father had asked him to feed their chickens at 6:30 in the morning every day. Tony had an idea. What if he could feed his chickens without leaving his bed? He rigged up some pulleys and ran ropes from the chicken coop door to his bedroom window. That night, he spread chicken feed outside the chicken coop door. The next morning, Tony pulled up on the rope and the door to the chicken coop opened. The chickens ate their breakfast. Tony stayed snug in his bed, and his dad, so impressed, never made Tony do another chore. Look at how he created. Look at his drawings right here. He started from 1, spread the feed the night before, 2, pull the rope, 3, door opens, 4, chickens come out. Isn't that unique? When Tony grew up, he moved to London, where he discovered that no one was making marionettes for kids anymore. So out of wood, cloth, and string, Tony began to make puppets. He figured out ways to make his marionettes' movement so lifelike that they performed as if they were real actors. Word soon spread about Tony's amazing marionettes. When Tony moved to New York City, the Tony Sarg marionettes began performing on Broadway. In the heart of New York City, in Harlan Square, was the biggest store on earth, R.H. Macy's department store. Macy's had heard about Tony's puppets and asked him to design a puppet parade for the store's holiday window. So Tony made new puppets based on storybook characters, then attached them to gears and pulleys to make them move. In Macy's Wondertown windows, Tony's mechanical marionettes danced across the stage as if it's magic. All day long, they performed to shoppers, josting for a better look. But Macy had an even bigger job in store for Tony. Many of the people working at Macy's were immigrants, and the holidays approached. They missed their own holiday tradition of music and dancing in the streets. Macy's agreed to put on a parade for the employees, and they hired Tony to help. Tony was an immigrant. Tony, too, was an immigrant. So he loved the idea of creating a parade based on street carnivals from all over the world. He made costumes and built horse-drawn floats, and Macy even arranged to bring in bears and elephants and camels from the Central Park Zoo. The animals joined hundreds of Macy's employees on Thanksgiving Day in 1924. Winding their way from Harlem to Harlem Square, it was a dazzling parade. In fact, Macy's first parade was such a success that they decided to have one every year on Thanksgiving Day to celebrate America's own holiday. Look at all of that. Each year, the parade grew, but when Macy's brought in lions and tigers, in addition to the bears, elephants, and camels, the animals roared and growled and frightened the children. Tony, can you think of something spectacular? That's where R.H. Macy is asking him. See him here? And here you see Tony. Okay. Macy asked Tony to replace the animals. Tony hoped to replace the animals with some kind of puppets, but his marionettes were less than 3 feet tall. He would have to make a much larger puppet in order for them to be seen in the parade. And how could he make them strong enough to hold up in bad weather, yet light enough to move up and down the streets? Tony knew of a company in Ohio that made blimps out of rubber, the perfect material for any weather. When he called the company and showed them his sketches, they agreed to make what Tony wanted. Still, how would Tony make a big puppet move? Then Tony had an idea from his Indonesia rod puppet in his toy collection. See that right there? On Thanksgiving Day, Tony's creatures, some as high as 16 feet, spilled into the streets, and the crowd cheered wildly. Part puppet, part balloon, and their air-filled rubber bags wobbled down the avenues, popped by wooden sticks. Look at that amazing scene. But now the sidewalks were so packed with people that only those in the first few rows could really see the parade. Tony realized his puppets would have to be even bigger and higher off the ground. And although the sticks had helped to steer the puppets, they were stiff and heavy. Tony wanted his balloons to articulate, to move and gesture, more like puppets. But how? With a marionette, the controls are above and the puppets are hung down. See how he's trying to decide? Look on his right and his left. But what if the controls were below and the puppets could rise up? During the next year, Tony set his new ideas into motion. This time, he asked the company in Ohio to make balloons out of rubberized silk as strong as rubber, but lighter than rubber alone. Most important, Tony ordered the balloons to be filled not just with air, but with helium too. Since helium is lighter than air, it would make the balloons rise. Once the puppets were completed, they were deflated and shipped back to Tony in New York. Tony did not know if everything would go as planned. You see him thinking here? It was still dark on Thanksgiving morning when Tony filled the balloons with helium, tethering them down with sandbags. By 1 p.m., the sidewalks were packed with people ready for the parade. Then, one by one, Tony cut the lines to the sandbags. Let's have a parade. And of course, this is sideways, so you kind of have to look at here. And the magnificent upside down marionettes rose up to the sides. Look at how it goes up, even though it's sideways. Nodding and waving to the crowds below, they sailed past Central Park. They sailed down Broadway. They shimmied, they swayed through the canyons of New York City. High above the crowds, they flourished in the afternoon wind, pulling up the rope handlers this way and that. Yet with every heave and hoe, the balloons gestured and articulated like wild puppets, and the crowd screamed for more. After the balloons were eased under the L, they ended up in front of Macy's at Tony's Wondertown windows. And L means a subway system. It was a parade New Yorkers would never forget. And you see the L right here on the right. And from that day on, every Thanksgiving morning, crowds have lined the sidewalks of New York City to see what new balloons would rise to the sky for Macy's famous parade. Tony Sarg, the puppeteer who loved to figure out how to make things move, had set the stage, with little rigging for a puppet to be anything anyone could imagine to be. And that's the end of our story time. But what I love about this book is the author's notes. And back here, you can read about Tony, a few words about the art, the characters that he created. Isn't that really neat? And this is actually a picture of him right here on the left side of the book. You see where he had created his first one. And I know this is sideways, but this is the way the book looks. But if you tilt your head, this was the original advertisement from the New York Times back in 1933, courtesy of Macy's Inc. So you can see how they basically advertised. In other words, they wanted to announce about the parade and how to get people to come to the parade as they put it in the paper. And this is how it looked back then. So now you can see how they got so many people to come from New York into town so that they can see this enormous parade, this beautiful parade. So this is what I love about this book. It kind of tells you a little bit about history. And I love at the back, it gives you some little quotes, but it also says it was a parade New Yorkers would never forget. Well, I hope you enjoyed story time as much as I have, and I hope you get a chance to actually, I'm going to bring myself back, is to get a chance to read this book. I'm going to move our book and come a little closer to you. I really enjoyed reading this book. I love reading books that tell you a little bit about history so you can learn why are things this way. I was always curious when I was a kid to know, why does this go this way? Well, how is this made? And just like the Thanksgiving parade, how did it get started? Well, now I know how the puppets got started and how the helium balloons got created, and so do you. So now we are going to start our own little puppet. Now remember when Tony was a kid, he started small and he worked his way up. So to do our puppet today, we're using a paper bag, and this is what we're going to do for today. Is our craft of the day is a paper bag reindeer puppet. Now at the parades there were different puppets. Remember, he started with animals, You can see reindeers. You always see Santa at the end of the parade. So today we're going to do a little reindeer puppet. So I hope you get to have fun as much as I do doing this puppet. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down, and I'm going to bring my camera down so you can see my tabletop. And let's get started with our craft of the day. Okay. As I mentioned, when we do the craft for the day, is you always want to have something on your surface that you're going to do your craft. Whether mine is an old actually cutting board, it's made out of plastic. I love using over and over when I do crafts. But if you have a plastic tablecloth, that will work. Newspapers, something to put on there so when you do your craft, underneath will not get ruined. So make sure you always have an adult with you when you're doing this craft. Now the supplies you're going to need is scissors, a pencil, glue. Now you can use Elmer's glue if you have this at home. I like using my glue stick. So either one you can have if you have either one. And then what you're also going to need is, of course, a paper bag. And this is just a regular lunch bag your parents may have, or whoever you're with at their house may have at home. I have two, is a lunch bag. Just a regular brown lunch bag. Now, if you have white, that's okay. I can give you some ideas for that too. And then what all you're going to need is some construction paper.